Today is World Press Freedom Day, which means it's the day that all the world's censors gaslight you to pretend that they actually care about your freedom of speech. Just last week, Justin Trudeau ran through a massive internet censorship bill called C-11. Just today, Trudeau's CRTC regulator announced that it will be drafting and reviewing ethics guidelines for newsrooms across Canada. Politicians will now go into independent news organizations and tell them how to do journalism. Boy, that didn't take long, did it? But I have big news for you today, an exclusive scoop for Rebel News. And it has to do with the CBC state broadcaster. As you know, Elon Musk briefly put a warning label on the CBC's Twitter account, calling them a government-funded news agency, which is true. The CBC say that themselves. It's obvious. It's not just government-funded. Its president and entire board of directors is chosen by the government. You just don't get more government-y than the CBC. The CBC squawked about this for some reason. It's weird. And Elon Musk then changed the label to partly government-funded. But now it looks like that label is gone. I don't know why. I think Elon Musk should reconsider that label based on what I'm about to show you. Because you see, on this World Press Freedom Day, I've got documents to show that senior CBC executives, including the president of the CBC herself, the American named Catherine Tate, they engaged in an ongoing campaign to pressure Twitter to censor people the CBC didn't like for content the CBC didn't approve of, who just happen to be the same people Justin Trudeau doesn't approve of. And it gets worse. The CBC's president, Catherine Tate, makes a veiled threat against Twitter that if Twitter doesn't ban the people the CBC wants banned, the CBC might stop doing business with Twitter, stop advertising on Twitter. And incredibly, the CBC threatens Twitter obliquely, implying that they have a direct line to Trudeau's government. And if Twitter doesn't do what they want, the CBC will sic the government on them. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty much a state broadcaster in the most Soviet sense of the word. I'll show it to you. You can find the entire document on our website, rebelnews.com. By the way, we are appealing the pages that they have hidden from us. They sent us 14 pages, but 5 of them were completely blanked out. Imagine the embarrassing things they didn't want to show us, considering what they did show us. You can find that on our website. Let me start in chronological order. This is a letter dated May 6th, 2021. And I should mention that that Elon Musk owned and bought Twitter after all these letters. So this is how they were trying to pressure even the pre-Elon Musk company. Imagine how bad they are now. So May 6th, 2021, a confidential letter written to Paul Burns, the managing director of Twitter Canada. I am writing to you about an issue affecting the women and men who work at Canada's public broadcaster, as well as journalists working in Canada and around the world who are increasingly targeted for harassment and abuse on your platform. In particular, the daily barrage of online misogyny, including threats of physical attack against women, people of color, and their families, is toxic and terrifying. This is from Catherine Tate, the president of the CBC. Unacceptable abuse on social media platforms has been a growing problem for members of the media, as well as for politicians and even medical professionals. A 2018 Troll Patrol report by Amnesty International found that female journalists and politicians are targeted for harassment or abuse on social media roughly every 30 seconds, and that women of color experience even higher levels of abuse. No working journalist today can afford to ignore the power of social media, whether she's using it to amplify her work or engage with the audience. Forced silence through relentless and vicious intimidation cannot be an option. Okay, so there's no particular complaint here. She's not talking about any particular tweet. The head of the CBC is just running a campaign. Is that her job, to get other companies to see the world the way she does? And it just happens to be identical to Justin Trudeau's campaign at the same time. That's weird. And here she criticizes Twitter. She says, your infringement process is haphazard and inconsistent. It can often take days to get a response, and too rarely does your company actually act to take down harassing material. And most often it is too late. The harm has been done. So let me get this straight. The CBC is complaining The CBC, a government agency that sometimes delays access to information requests by years, they're complaining that Twitter sometimes takes days to get back to them. As you are no doubt aware, Canada's Minister of Heritage will be tabling new legislation to address online hate in the coming months. What are you mentioning that for? Why are you promoting what the Minister of Heritage is doing? What's that got to do with anything? That, by the way, was Bill C-36, a law that would fine people up to $20,000 for any statement they made on social media, even if they made those statements as a kid. You can look it up yourself. She continues, I am asking to meet with you so that we can agree on a clear, effective, and rapid process for removing hateful material targeting journalists when it appears on your platform. This will be an important step in improving the online world for our democracy, for all of us. So she's against online hate. But hate is a natural human emotion. Now, we don't like hate. We prefer love, but it's natural. And I mean, the CBC hates you. The Liberals hate you. Justin Trudeau hates the unvaccinated. The CBC said the truckers were organized by Vladimir Putin. They hate the truckers. Hate is a natural human emotion. You can't really much ban a human emotion. You can ban threats of violence or things like that. And Twitter already does. And of course, the criminal code applies everywhere, including on Twitter. Why was Catherine Tate, apropos of nothing, promoting a government censorship agenda? Isn't her job to be president and CEO of CBC Radio Canada? It's right there in her signature line. Since when does the president of the CBC tell other companies, private companies, what to do? I mean, shouldn't the CBC get its own act together, run its own? Well, why is the CBC pressuring other companies to take a certain censorship line? Well, here's the next letter in this series. It gets really weird. This is a letter May 26th, 2021. It's written to Stephanie King, Vice President and Deputy General Counsel of Twitter in San Francisco. And the subject line is tweet containing hate speech. And what's weird is they've blacked out who this letter is from. They showed the letter from Catherine Tate. I don't know why they blanked this out. I am blank to the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. You're what? We write concerning a series of tweets that was published on May 18th, 2021, see Exhibit A. And they won't show us those tweets. I wonder why. We consider the tweets to be dangerous hate speech in violation of Twitter's rules and policies. We have filed numerous takedown requests since the tweets were published, to no avail. We wish the removal of these tweets. I'm sure you do. I mean, you're government journalists. A real journalist would probably be more sympathetic to free speech, but you're government journalists. And then there's another blacked out name. An individual with the Twitter handle blank published a series of tweets in which he claims CBC News has banned all content that is sympathetic to Palestinians. Now, I happen to know that's not true. The CBC is actually quite pro-Palestinian, but so what? It's some guy's opinion. He's allowed to have an opinion. He's allowed to even be wrong. That's part of democracy. Let me continue reading. He expresses his desire that CBC be prevented from going on air unless its management backs down. Now, I don't think I would like this Twitterer, as he sounds very, I might even say he is anti-Semitic by some of the other details in the letter, but so what? And the fact that this guy doesn't want the CBC to have its say, well, this very letter to Twitter is the CBC trying to silence that guy. You have two illiberal forces saying, you shut up. No, you shut up. What is CBC doing telling Twitter to ban its critics? Its critics might be wrong. They might even be rude. But since when does the CBC write lengthy letters to the General Counsel of Twitter telling them to silence their critics? We are of the view that these tweets are clearly designed to arouse anti-Jewish animus through their use of highly charged anti-Semitic language, e.g., Jewish white supremacists, Zionist censors, supporters of Israeli apartheid, and the imperialist colony. Look, I don't like those phrases either because I'm Jewish myself. I'm pro-Israel. You could call me a Zionist. But those may be offensive words, or actually I think they're more just words I would disagree with. Since when is the CBC in the business of just silencing people who are wrong or who have opinions they don't like? And look at who this letter was copied to. It was sent by some mystery person. It was copied to Vijaya Gaddy, who is the head of legal policy and trust, copied to Michelle Austin, who is the head of public policy for Twitter in Canada, and Paul Burns, the fellow who received the first letter, and of course Cam Gordon, the head of communications for Twitter in Canada. Oh, by the way, copied to Catherine Tate of the CBC also. So that's 2 letters in short order telling Twitter to silence people they don't like. And here we go, June 9th. They're really on a campaign here. Subject, hate speech on your platform. Miss King, on May 26, we wrote to you about a series of tweets published on your platform on May 18, which we consider to be dangerous hate speech. Sorry, it's not dangerous to criticize Israel and call it apartheid. It's wrong in my view. I find it maybe offensive and maybe insulting, but it's not dangerous. It's not dangerous in violation of Twitter's own rules and policies. You must be aware by now of the degree to which your platform continues to weaponize the online harassment and abuse of journalists and media hosts, particularly women and those from racialized communities. It attacks trusted news sources and thus undermines reasoned discourse, democracy, and the health of our societies. Your lack of attention on this problem is extremely troubling. It also gives credence to those in this country who believe that legislation is necessary in order to ensure that Twitter enforces its own guidelines and abides by domestic laws and regulations. Oh, gee, I wonder who they're talking about. By the way, I thought that they were worried about white supremacists, and now they're saying this targets racialized minorities. This is just all liberal woke gobbledygook. But again, what is Twitter doing? There are some people on Twitter who are anti-Israel and call it an apartheid country. I happen to know it's not an apartheid country, and we can have an argument about this. Since when is the CBC in the business of demanding that Twitter silence them and saying those are dangerous views? That's almost exactly the same language Justin Trudeau used to talk about critics of his vaccine policy. He said those are unacceptable views. CBC really is a state broadcaster, aren't they? Here's how the letter is ended. We expect Twitter to act promptly when it becomes aware of incidents of abuse of journalists facilitated by Twitter. In this regard, we would like to establish a more direct and effective protocol to ensure that this will be the case in the future. Yeah, they've heard about how the FBI and the CIA had a direct contact with Twitter so they could directly censor things. The CBC wanted to be able to directly censor things on Twitter. That is super gross. We will raise this and other procedures in a meeting scheduled soon with the leadership of Twitter Canada. Signed, Claude Gallipo, Executive Vice President. Huh, really? Okay, well, now it looks like the meeting had happened because now we're on the June 23rd letter to no one less than the CEO, Jack Dorsey. So this is the CBC coming back at it again and again and again. They're on a real campaign. It's almost like they were taking orders from Trudeau himself. Let me read excerpts from this letter. You can see the whole thing on our website, rebelnews.com. Mr. Dorsey, as President and CEO of Canada's public broadcaster, I am writing to request a meeting with you to determine how we will ensure that Twitter effectively acts in removing offensive material from its platform. Can you imagine if the shoe was on the other foot? If Jack Dorsey said, "Dear CBC, I would like an immediate meeting with you to talk about how we can remove offensive things on your platform." Could you imagine how CBC would squawk about that? Here's the CBC demanding that Twitter remove offensive things. Offensive to the CBC or to Trudeau? Who cares? Since when does the CBC tell anyone what they can or can't say? This next part's very interesting. On June 10th, I met with Michelle Austin and Cam Gordon, your representatives here in Canada. To be honest, I found our meeting unsatisfactory. We were told that our case had been reviewed and found not to be in contravention of Twitter's policies. When we asked how we could appeal this decision, we were told to feel free to pursue whatever action we consider appropriate. And then look at this line. Given our business relationship with your company, I found this response not only unhelpful, but quite frankly rude. Let me translate what that means. We spend thousands of dollars on advertising on Twitter. You better make this right or we will boycott you. And then this. I recall your testimony to Congress in 2018 where you committed to protecting your platform from disinformation and to, quote, encourage more healthy debate, conversations, and critical thinking on the platform. That commitment is at odds with Twitter's failure to act when a provider of trusted news, in this case CBC Radio Canada, is unable to get action on offending or misleading content. Oh, so it's not hateful anymore. It's not certainly not illegal or dangerous. It's just what they disagree with, misleading, unhelpful. The CBC is literally trying to censor things that they declare to be misinformation. Again, that is Trudeau's tactic now too. Since when is the CBC in charge of censoring other media? And not for anything hateful or harassing. They're not trying that line here again. They're just saying things that they deem to be misinformation. So the CBC not only is a propaganda organ itself, they want Twitter to follow their instructions. I would hope you would share our concern about the degree to which your platform weaponizes the harassment and abuse of journalists and hosts, particularly women and those from racialized communities. No examples given, by the way. As you know, this is a global issue, one all our media colleagues, especially in public broadcasting, are facing. Let me translate. Stop people saying mean things about our left-wing bias. But look at this next part. This is the threat. Here is the CBC state broadcaster bearing its fangs. Look at this. We have been sharing our mounting concerns with the Canadian government, which is proposing legislation to address online hate. There is significant public support for such legislation. That's not true, actually. As head of a media organization which values freedom of speech and of the press, I would prefer that Twitter take meaningful action on its own to address this problem. Nice free speech platform you got there. Shame if something were to happen to it. You know, we were talking to the government the other day and, whoo, boy, let me just put it this way. It would be better if you fix this problem voluntarily now than if my friends in government fixed it. Because we love free speech, so censor what I want you to censor. I say again, all of this was a year before Elon Musk bought Twitter. I say again that these access to information documents, which were exclusively given to us, they're still hiding 5 of the 14 pages. They blacked them out. The CBC was making threats to other companies to censor Canadians. They were making business threats. They were making political threats on behalf of Trudeau. Will Trudeau admit that or will he disavow that? Was Catherine Tate just talking tough, or did she really say to Trudeau, I'll help you get Twitter, and if they don't bend the knee to me, you come in with the heavy stuff? Catherine Tate, the boss of CBC, is indistinguishable from Trudeau in terms of political policy. Her letters could have and maybe even were written by Trudeau's office. And everything I've showed you today is what they put in writing. Imagine what they would say in phone calls or meetings. Imagine the coordination behind the scenes with Trudeau. She already admitted that they've been consulting with the government on what to do about Twitter. And imagine what they've already got away with pro-censorship companies like YouTube and Facebook. Catherine Tate of the CBC is not a journalist. She is a Trudeau liberal operative, masquerading as a journalist. She's literally the personification of fake news. That was an excerpt from the Ezra Levant show. I'm Ezra Levant. Every weekday I do a monologue about the topic of the day. Then I interview a fascinating guest either in studio or via Skype. And then I read your mail, whether it's fan mail or hate mail, which is sometimes even more interesting. This is on our premium service, though, called Rebel News Plus. Go to rebelnewsplus.com. It's $8 a month or less if you buy a whole year in advance. You get my show every weeknight, plus Sheila Gunn Reid's show every week. It's called The Gun Show. It's pretty amazing. You know, we rely on you because we do not take a dime from the government. In Canada, that makes us almost unique. So please help us out and help yourself to some great journalism at rebelnewsplus.com.